Welcome, I'm Carrie from Kberry Crochet, and today we'll be making the bloom blanket. The flowers for this blanket are worked by using a 31 stitch by 31 row repeat of all single crochets to make these flowers, where we just switch between our light purple and our dark purple. And then for the border, we'll add in some half double crochets and slip stitches to make a fun little scalloped edge. One of the best things about this blanket is even though we have lots of color changes and a pretty intricate design, we don't have a lot of extra ends to weave in with all those color changes, because whatever color we're not using is always just going to be carried underneath the stitches that we're making. So we get all the beautiful detail of color changes without the extra work of weaving in the ends. As we start working through the blanket, you'll see that the instructions are presented in a couple different ways. You'll always see written instructions across the top of the screen, and then you'll also see, as we're working through the flower part, a grid where each cell of the grid represents one single crochet, and it will just give you a visual guide for where to change colors. And then also for the first few rows of the flower and also for most of the border, I will be crocheting along with you so you can see exactly how to make all the stitches. For this blanket, we'll use an H hook, which is 5 millimeters, 4 stitch markers, which we'll use to mark the corners when we're working the border, a pair of scissors to cut the ends, a yarn needle for weaving in the ends, and of course our yarn. For the yarn, I chose to use Lily Sugar and Cream, and for the lighter color, which is color 1, I used Orchid, and for the darker color, which is color 2, I used Black Currant. You can make the blanket in pretty much any size by just adjusting the number of repeats of the flower motif. So I've put a formula over to the left here to help you estimate how much yarn you'll need based on the size blanket that you want. We're going to start the blanket by working with color 1. So we'll make a slip knot, and then chain a multiple of 31 plus 1 more. So for example, I'm going to chain 32 to make just a small sample to show you guys. But when I made my actual blanket, I made a chain of 125, which is 31 times 4 plus 1. And however many multiples of 31 you choose to do, that's how many flowers you're going to have going across your blanket. Once you've finished your chain, we're going to introduce color 2 and start working our first row of single crochets. So with the second color, you're just going to take that yarn and you're going to hold it just behind your hook and place it on top of your chain on the side that you'll be working into. And for our single crochets, we'll start by working into the second chain from the hook. So we'll insert our hook. And notice you go into that loop and also underneath color 2 that's sitting on top. And then we'll yarn over and pull up a loop and yarn over and pull through both loops, just like a regular single crochet, just we have that extra piece of yarn there. So we'll do that again. Holding that second color on top all the way across, and we'll just make one single crochet in each chain, all with color 1. When you get to the end of the row, you should have one less single crochet than you had chains. So I'll have 31 single crochets at the end of the row. Once we've finished the first row, we'll move on to the second row, which will be another row of single crochets worked entirely with color 1. At this point, you'll probably want to turn your work, so that if you're a righty, you'll be working from right to left again, and if you're a lefty, you'll be working from left to right. I'm actually going to keep my work facing the same direction because I'm going to work my even rows with my left hand instead of my right hand. I do this partly to be fair to the lefties who may be watching, but also because when I first started crocheting again as an adult, my tension was really wonky, and I found that working alternating rows of right and left was the only thing that fixed it. So I kind of created a habit of that. So I like to work right and then left when I'm doing color changes especially. Anyways, at the start of each row from here on out, we're going to chain 1 and then make a single crochet in the very first stitch. And our chain is not going to count as a stitch when we're doing this. So I'll insert my hook into that first stitch. And then just like before, when we made sure that we also went under that color 2 strand, we'll do the same thing. So I went through my stitch and also under the color 2 strand. And then I'll yarn over and pull up a loop and yarn over and pull through both loops to finish my first single crochet. I'm going to do that all the way across, and notice I'm going to be carrying this color 2 strand again. You'll want to hold it on top of your stitches, or even a little bit behind is where I like to hold mine to keep it from getting tangled with my working strand. So we'll single crochet all the way across, and at the end of the row you should have the same number of stitches as you had in row 1. And we'll maintain that number of stitches all the way throughout our blanket. So I'll have 31 stitches at the end of this row. We're on to row 3, and in this row you'll see color 2 is finally going to make an appearance in our stitch sequence. So we'll have 15 single crochets in color 1, and then 1 single crochet in color 2 in the middle, and then 15 more single crochets with color 1. So we'll start our row the same way we did for row 2 with a chain 1 and then a single crochet in the very first stitch, again making sure we're working around color 2 that we're carrying. And then we have 15 in this color. So I'll go ahead and make 14 of them, and then we'll pause for the 15th so we can go through the color change together. For the 15th single crochet, which is the last single crochet in color 1, we're going to start it as normal, but then we're going to finish it with color 2 to change over to that color. So I'll insert my hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And now I'm going to switch to color 2 at this point and bring color 1 to the back. And for the last yarn over, I'm going to use color 2. So now you can see that we've made our 15th stitch in color 1, but now we have color 2 on our hook ready to go for the next stitch. So now for that one, we just have 1 stitch in color 2. So we'll start it with color 2. And now look, we're working around color 1, just like we were when we were working with color 1 and we had to go around color 2. So I'll yarn over with color 1 and pull up a loop. But now since we're changing right back to color 1, I'll pick that back up, move color 2 back to the back, and yarn over and pull through both loops. So now you can see we've completed our stitch in color 2, and we're back to color 1 on our hook. Now we'll make 15 more single crochets, all with color 1, and we'll be carrying color 2 in the back again. This will bring me to the end of the row since I only have 31 stitches. But if you have more stitches than that, which you probably do if you're making a blanket, you'll just repeat that entire 31 stitch sequence until you get to the end of the row. So that's 15 single crochets in color 1, 1 single crochet in color 2, and then 15 single crochets in color 1 again. Just repeat all the way across. We'll move on to row 4 now, and I am again going to switch to using my left hand since this is an even row. So I'll start with a chain 1, and then for this row we'll have 14 single crochets in color 1, then 3 in color 2, and then 14 more in color 1. So I'll start with my single crochet in the first stitch, working around color 2. And then I will make 13 single crochets, and then I'll pause at the 14th to again go through that color change a little more slowly. All right, so I've made 13 stitches in color 1, and now The 14th stitch will be the last stitch in color 1 before we change over to color 2. So I'll start that stitch with color 1, but I'll finish it with color 2. So I'll insert my hook underneath the stitch and underneath that color 2 strand. I'll yarn over and pull up a loop, still working with color 1, but now for the last yarn over, I'll bring color 1 to the back, bring color 2 to the front, and I'll finish the stitch with color 2. So I will now yarn over and pull through both loops to finish that stitch. So we've finished our 14 stitches in color 1, and now we have color 2 on our hook ready to go for the next 3 stitches. So now I'll start those 3 stitches. I'll insert my hook, and now we'll be working around that color 1 strand, carrying that behind. I'll yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops. So now you can see we have our first color 2 stitch. We have 2 more. And now, since the 3rd stitch is our last one in color 2 before we switch back to color 1, we'll start it with color 2, but finish it with color 1. So I'll insert my hook, going through the stitch and underneath color 1, and then with color 2, I'll do my yarn over and pull up a loop to start the stitch. And then I will bring color 2 to the back, pick up color 1 again to finish the stitch. And then with color 1, I'm going to yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook to finish that stitch. So now we have our 3 stitches in color 2 and color 1 back on our hook to finish the row. So next we'll have 14 single crochets in color 1. And since we're working in color 1, we're holding color 2 on top or behind our stitches and working around it. And similar to the last row, if you have more than 31 stitches, you'll repeat this entire 31 stitch sequence until you get to the end of your row. So that's 14 single crochets in color 1, 3 in color 2, and then 14 in color 1 again. By now you're probably getting a pretty good feel for how to work through these instructions and change your colors. So I'm going to let you work at your own pace through the rest of the blanket with just the written instructions and also the chart to guide you. And then we'll meet up again at the end to go over the border and the finishing details. Once we're done with all of the flowers, we can move on to the border. So the border's worked entirely in color 2, so I'm actually going to back up a stitch so I can switch over to that color. We won't be using color 1 anymore, so you can go ahead and cut that strand and leave a tail for weaving in at the end. The border consists of 4 rows, and those first 3 rows are going to be single crochets all the way around the edge of the blanket. So to begin, we're going to be working down the side of our blanket into the sides of each of our rows. I'll start with a chain 1, and then I'm going to place my hook into the side of the last single crochet from this top row. I'll yarn over and pull up a loop, and yarn over and pull through both loops to finish that first single crochet. I'll then repeat that all the way down the side of the blanket. It can sometimes be tricky to figure out where to place your stitches in the sides, but try not to worry about it too much. It doesn't matter so much where you place it, as long as you're consistent as you go down the side of the blanket. In the bottom row, which is where we'll be making the last stitch of this side of the border, you're going to work 2 single crochets instead of 1. And that second single crochet is going to form the corner to bring us around to the next side. I'm also going to place a stitch marker in that corner stitch so that I can find the corner easily when I'm working back around for the second row. Now we can start working across the bottom of our blanket, and for this side we're going to be crocheting into the bottom of the foundation chain that we used to start our project. And the first single crochet for this side will be worked right below where we just made our corner stitch. So I'll make a single crochet, and then I will just repeat that all the way across the bottom of the blanket. In the last space, we'll make 2 single crochets to form the next corner. And I will mark this corner with a stitch marker as well. For the next side, we'll be working into the sides of our rows again. So we'll make 1 single crochet in the side of each row all the way until we get to the top of our blanket, and we'll make 2 single crochets to form the third corner. And then we will single crochet in each stitch across the top. In the last stitch, we'll make 2 single crochets to form the fourth corner. And then we'll join to the first stitch of the border with a slip stitch. And that completes the first row of the border. For the second and third rows of the border, we'll start with a chain 1 and then single crochet in each stitch around the border. We'll be working 1 single crochet in each stitch, except when we get to the corners. In those corner stitches that we've marked, we'll be making 3 single crochets to bring us around to the next side of the blanket. I'll make my last set of 3 single crochets into the corner stitch. And then place the stitch marker onto the new corner stitch, which is the second of those 3 stitches. And I'll join back to the start of the row with a slip stitch. And then place the stitch marker onto the new corner stitch, which is the second of those 3 stitches. And I'll join back to the start of the row with a slip stitch. So I've just finished the second row of the border. The third row of the border will start off the same way we did row 2. So you'll chain 1 and then single crochet all the way around, making 3 single crochets in each corner stitch. But the end of the row will be slightly different. So I'm just about to finish up the third row here. So I'll make my 3 single crochets in the corner. And mark my new corner. And then we have 1 space left for a single crochet here since we added stitches at the corner in the last round. So I'll make the last single crochet, and then instead of joining to the first stitch of that round, I'm just going to end my row here and we'll start straight into the 4th row without joining first. The 4th row is where we'll create that shell edging. So for each shell, we'll make a slip stitch. And then we will skip the next stitch. And in the following stitch, we'll make 5 half double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 half double crochets. And then we will skip the next stitch and make another slip stitch into the following stitch. And that is 1 shell. We will use yet another 31 stitch repeat as we work around this outer border. That will consist of 3 shells like what we just made, and then a slip stitch, and then 3 more shells. That will cover 31 stitches, and then you'll repeat that sequence until there are 2 stitches between your hook and the next corner. In the corner, we'll make a shell, but it'll be slightly different than the other shells we've made. It will start the same way with a slip stitch, and then we'll skip the next stitch, and then the following stitch, which is the corner, we will work 7 half double crochets instead of 5. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So once we have all those half double crochets, we will skip the next stitch and make a slip stitch in the following stitch to finish our shell. And that larger 7 half double crochet shell is what we're going to do in each of the corners. For the remaining 3 sides, we'll continue to work that 31 stitch repeat of 3 shells, followed by a slip stitch, followed by 3 more shells, and then in each corner, we'll work that larger 7 half double crochet shell to turn the corner. At the last corner, we'll make our final shell stitch that has 7 half double crochets in the corner. And then ends with skipping a stitch and making a slip stitch. And then we are done crocheting, so you can cut your end and tie off. Now we'll weave in our ends using a yarn needle. So you'll thread your needle, and then you will use it to carry your yarn underneath the stitches, weaving back and forth so that your end is nice and secure. Once you've gone back and forth a few times and you're confident that tail isn't going anywhere, you can pull your yarn really tight and then cut it right up against the blanket. And then you'll repeat that process with any other tails you may have. And now the blanket is complete. Thanks for crocheting with me.